What a collection of readings. It looks like I've drawn the short straw again. On Sunday, Sharon sent me an email which said, "Watch the beginning of this video and let me know if you still want to preach on Sunday." This seemed like a very strange request. And when I opened the video, I saw what Sharon meant, and I began to chuckle and to shudder. As it happened 3 years ago, the last time we were in the C cycle of Sunday readings, I was selected to preach on the 25th Sunday of Ordinary Time. And of course, these were the readings. I began my homily that day by telling you that in my preparations, I had come across many commentators who suggested that this set of readings were perhaps, of all the year's readings, the most difficult on which to preach. I understood Sharon's question, but not being one to shrink from a challenge, here I am. These readings are replete with cheating and corruption, deceit and deception. In the reading from Amos, they even describe how they will orchestrate their ill-gotten gains. We will diminish the ephah and add to the shekel and fix our scales for cheating. Kind of like the butcher who puts his finger on the scale to falsely increase the weight of your purchase. At the end of this passage, however, God proclaims, "Never will I forget a thing they have done." In the gospel, the corrupt steward is clever and conniving. He protects his interests at the expense of the landowner. In this case, however, the landowner appears to commend the dishonest steward for his foresight. Perhaps the landowner was as corrupt and dishonest as the steward. In our current society, we are presented with false narratives, claims of fake news, and outright lies. It causes us to wonder, as Pontius Pilate did, what is truth? Think about that for a moment. What do you really know to be absolutely true without a doubt? Perhaps, if we go back to the days of the Baltimore Catechism, we might find that the answers to the first three questions give us something to hang our truth hats upon. God made us. God is the supreme being who made all things and keeps them in existence. God made us to show God's goodness and to share everlasting happiness with us in heaven. In the letter to Timothy, the first century writer gives us more. God, our Savior, wills everyone to be saved and to come to knowledge of the truth. For there is only one God. At the end of this section, the writer declares, "I am speaking the truth. I am not lying." In an age where truth has become relative or even non-existent, it becomes harder and harder to discern what truth actually is. What is truth? 4 chapters before Pilate asks that question, what is truth? Jesus answers the question. I am the way, the truth, and the life. At the beginning of this section, the writer asks that supplications, prayers, petitions, and thanksgiving be offered for everyone, for rulers, and for all in authority, that we may lead a quiet and tranquil life in all devotion and dignity. In the first century, as is the case today, much of that quiet and tranquil life was determined by religious tolerance and political stability, guaranteed by those in leadership positions. A little historical aside might add a little emphasis on what is to come in my homily. So, if you don't mind, a little historical perspective. Rome was established in 510 BCE as a republic governed by two consuls who were elected to their positions. This worked for almost 500 years until Julius Caesar became emperor. It was no longer a republic, but an empire, ruled with a mighty and authoritative hand. Hopefully, we are not leading to that today in our country. And after Caesar's death, the people began to deify the emperors, and they prayed to them. It is important to note that in this early Christian letter, written during that same time period, it does not suggest that people pray to the rulers, but they should pray for them. It implies that the rulers, like everybody else, depend upon the guidance and mercy of God. I would like us to take a moment now to pray for the leaders of our country and our world, that they may be compassionate and truthful, open to God's guidance and to receiving God's mercy. Jesus is indeed the way, the truth, and the life. May we always seek the truth so that we can follow Jesus' way to life. Well, that's the end of my prepared homily. But as almost always happens, when I pray with the scriptures in the morning, despite the fact that I've been working with them for a week, I wind up with another insight. And the insight that came to me this morning was the one at the very end of the first reading, where God says, "Never will I forget a thing they have done." And although in Amos it was this God looking down and ready to pounce on those evil people, my God looks at me and you and what we have done, and what we have done that is good and right and just. And God will never forget a thing that we have done.